Hello. So, Leo from Game Production here. I'm trying to work on a new series of recordings which are much shorter than my normal ones. They normally go on for about 2 hours. So I thought this time I'd keep it briefer. So I have a question or two questions that have come in and I want to cover them. So let's just start my screen share. So over on the Discord Academy, which I'll share a link with you, the Game Production Academy, Glitchbug asked a question. So here it is. How would you introduce an agile methodology, Scrum, Kanban, etc., to a team that uses no specific methodology? I'm talking about a small studio, no more than 10 people. How do you manage estimations and time management when people are assigned to multiple projects happening at the same time? So I say, okay, is it a small studio making a game or working on codev? And it's clarified here that it's mainly for work for hire studio. Do some full development. Now, that's great. So, firstly, start with Kanban, not Scrum. Very important. Why Kanban? Why not Scrum or some other methodology? Quite simple. You have 10 people. And I think with a work for hire studio with multiple clients, Kanban is the natural fit. Scrum, sprints and ceremonies, assume a few things and are best for a few things. And I have covered this in videos that you will find on my YouTube channel about Agile, Scrum, and about Kanban, and about when to use each. When you're looking at Scrum and when you're looking at Kanban, the big difference is Scrum's really good with, say, 2 or 3 week cadence work where you're saying, here's the work we're going to do in that time, and don't interrupt us. And we have a dedicated team doing this thing. It's a T-shaped, dedicated team. It's going to be together for years. We're going to achieve all these things. Okay, off we go. Kanban doesn't do that. Kanban says, and it's really, I think, showcased in DevOps. But Kanban says, right, you probably have a bunch of chaotic work coming in that you need to make sense of. If you put that into a Kanban board and use Kanban rules and proper Kanban methodology, then it will work for you. You will be able to make sense of it. If I go back to what I said about DevOps, the DevOps revolution, if you will, that's happened relatively recently. And we've had lots of DevOps books coming out and whatever, and lots of people talking about these things. But DevOps can be used in, let's say, IT support, where you might be in a games company and working for the people who handle supporting your IT, supporting your hardware and your software, etc., doing backups, etc. That team has to deal with, at the top of their board, all of these requests for help coming in with various levels of priority and urgency, impact, etc., attached to them. Then underneath that, they have regular project work that comes in where they've been asked to, for example, can you move this server to the cloud? And that will require working with multiple people across multiple teams and could take a very long time, might have a date fixed to it, it might not. And then they have regular, say, end of month backups and things like that need to happen, maybe reporting and these sort of things. And if they don't do that work, they're in trouble. So they have to be able to visualize all of that and say, how much time have we actually got to spend on each of those different areas? And when should we be spending that time? In the face of not really knowing how much IT support is going to come in. They don't really understand that, right, until it happens. So it could be that one day everybody comes back from, say, the Christmas holidays. They come back in January and something's gone terribly wrong with the system. And maybe all the passwords have been reset, and suddenly this massive work comes in for the team. Well, at that point, you have to say, well, I can't work on the project work. I can't work on this other nice to have, say, technical investment work, which would improve our services. We have to throw everybody at helping them with the problem that's come in. That's very normal, and it's a very normal case for using Kanban, because Kanban will say, that's great. We don't care if you context switched. We don't care if a chaotic picture needs to be turned into a nice ordered picture. We don't care if loads of things are coming in, because we're going to work with you to visualize that work and just take the chaos out of it. So the minimum setup is you have a shared board with swim lanes per project, let's say. So let's say you got 3 projects, you got 3 swim lanes, major swim lanes, and you get columns. So like backlog, ready, in progress, review, done, and you flow from left to right. Backlog says, as I'm sure you all know, here's the backlog of work. But ready, the cards that move into ready are the ones that you've pulled from the backlog, which means you've already had to prioritize what's in the backlog. And you've put enough information into each of those cards to say, we know what needs to be done. It's ready to go. And that means that a person can pull it into in progress when they have capacity. And then once it's done, then presumably they think it's done. So it's in review. Now you might say in a work for hire that the review might need to be split into more columns, because it could be you need an internal review and then you need the external client to review it. And then it comes back and then it might need to be redone. And then eventually it can be marked as done. So it depends. Now the WIP limits say there is a work in progress cap. You cannot work on 8 things at once. You just can't. So normally, and this varies and can change, but normally you might say have 2 per person as a WIP limit. So you might say the person can work on one thing, and if that thing gets blocked or is waiting for review, they can pull the next card along that's in the ready, and they'll work from the top down, and you'll have prioritized that already. So they pull the next thing along, they're working on 2 things at once, right? Now, that can change as well, because you might say, well, actually, we're going to have a blocked column. And if something's in blocked, they can still have 2 things on the go in there in progress. But what you do with Kanban is you're very careful to map out on a whiteboard until it becomes an electronic version. You map out on a whiteboard, or what is the current situation? How do we work? How do we move something from ready to in progress? What does need to happen before we can exit in progress and send it for review? And then you can start to measure how things work as a flow from left to right, how things work in terms of how long do they spend in each one of those columns. And you can start looking at that in the future and saying, well, I think it spends way too long in review with the client. Or maybe there's a blocker in another column, right? As you map it out, and as you start making it work for you, you'll notice these things. Alongside the Kanban board, we'll use a simple capacity table. And you can say, well, here's a percentage allocation across projects per week. And you can start looking at that as well. So all sounds very simple, right? And it isn't. The reason it isn't is that you really need to think about splitting that work into similar sized work. Let's call them, well, cards, right? So often I would say, don't use things like story points. Just use t-shirt size. And those t-shirt sizes probably map perfectly well to hours. Probably should, right? Because it helps you with your estimates. So small might be an hour to an hour and a half. Medium might be half a day or to a day. And large might be anything more than a day, right? Or whatever works for you, because you know your customers and you know the kind of work you normally get in. It may be that you're an animation house and animations always take at least 2 days. And also you might have a more complicated flow. So you might say, we can't go in progress, review, done. For us, it's always going to be in progress, internal review, external review, back to in progress, because there's always going to be a need to finish off the quality and the finishing touches of the work. And that's fine, right? You do whatever works for you. In workflows like that, it gives you the opportunity to be measuring more minutely where there's holdups and things like this, and being able to unblock those holdups. So it's up to you. But what's important is that you understand that context switching comes with a cost. And if your company's built around context switching, you want to build in something like a 1.5 buffer to start with. And then you can look at that buffer and you can see if it's accurate. But a 1.5 times buffer for context switching, let's call it a tax, it's pretty sensible. If somebody thinks it's going to be 8 hours of work and that's, say, a medium, make it 12 hours of calendar time. And you then track the actuals for 4 to 6 weeks to try and get some proper data in. And you just see patterns emerge, right? So back-end work always takes twice when Sarah's on 2 projects, or QA's our bottleneck, or whatever. And then you can get honest with the clients about the timeline, which makes them happy, right? Because they go, right, okay, you've given us accurate results and you've matched that in your performance. Great. It might have taken longer than we'd originally hoped, but you were accurate. It could be that you can start having conversations about, well, the problem is when it gets to your side, oh lovely client, you take twice as long as any other client to come back to us. So we would suggest that you need to put more people on it if you want us to make the flow from beginning to end quicker, right? Reduce the flow time. So there are various things that you can do over time to make your Kanban board and your Kanban, the way it works, more effective. And that means more effective for the team. But also, you can use cadence. So, Scrum cadence tends to be, say, a 2 or 3 week cadence with lots of ceremonies. Kanban throws in a few ceremony suggestions, such as stand ups and things like that. But I think in your case, you can get away with a Monday 15-minute stand up per project. And you want to separate them out because you don't want the situation where you're making it per person, because it's the per project, as in you have different clients. So you want to know how the client's project is going, not how people happen to be progressing across the different ones. What is finishing next week? What's blocked? And what's coming up? And where do you need some help, etc., etc. And then you can do your 10-minute retro on a Friday and you say one thing to improve. The reason it's one thing to improve is because it's Kanban. Kanban says, look at where you are now. So when you're putting this together, you will spend a few hours with your team and say, let's just pause and say, how do we get work at the moment? How do we move something from in progress to review? What are the rules that we have in place? Do we all agree on them? And you'll find that there will be people there who don't know a thing or people who will do things differently. But you'll see that depending on somebody's role, they might have a much more complex flow than you expected because that's how their role works. And you might find that someone like QA has an anticipatory need of what's coming that's much more important for them to be able to quantify and qualify the help they need and the outsourcing they might need to be doing, versus, say, an animator who simply needs to know how many things are coming and just gets on with it. So it depends, right? And it'll help you because you can have an enormous amount of work flooding towards QA at a point when QA is not ready to handle it and it can all come in at the same time from 3 projects. That you're going to try and avoid. And if you visualize things on these boards, you'll see how the bottlenecks start appearing and you'll see the flow of work, and you can have a much more meaningful discussion with clients and with your own internal management about, look, we've got some conflicts happening, but we can see that they're going to happen. So it gives you that information. It's incredible. But listen to your team, like sit with your team and say, I want to try this thing with you. You got to tell me, right? How does it work at the moment? And then, well, we could try it like this. Maybe we need an extra swimming lane. Maybe we have an extra column. We have 2 people working in the same role. So cards can be assigned to either of them, but one of them is an expert and one of them is a beginner. We need to be careful who to assign what to and how do we assign that? If they're ready and the other person's blocked, can they pull a card even if they're a beginner and it's a very difficult thing? Or is it worth waiting for the other person to come free? And if that's the case, does that mean we should be reviewing and prioritizing cards in a slightly different way? And it allows you to have openly, no emotion, just objective, using data review rather than subjective review. So the capacity table that I'll show you, you can see what's actually shipped and you can adjust things. But it's important, don't say an agile transformation. I've done those. I've done agile transformations for Scrum. I've done Kanban. I've done lean, waste reduction and things like that. And it's much better if you simply go, we're just going to make things better. And let's just find out how you work now, right? And that's really important because it comes back to your Friday retro. If you know how things are now, you can pick one small thing to improve a week. You're not going to do a big, let's change everything. You're going to say, well, what's one thing that's not really working, but someone's got an idea? So you get the team feeding back to you. It's like time incredibly well spent because they are listened to. They're actually helping you to improve things. So it's not surveillance, it's a shared brain, right? Everyone can see what everyone's doing. And that means they can all help each other to improve. So it's data and you're pulling things. You're saying, right, I've now got capacity. I had two things. I've moved one along. So now I can pull another one in. Great. And that's where your producer or project manager comes in to make sure the right things are at the top. So it's not a sudden like, oh, didn't I tell you we had another project coming? Oh, here's 100 pieces of work for you to do. Do them all now. It's very much like my mind can concentrate on what's in front of me. And I'll pull the next one, and I'll pull the next one, and I'll pull the next one. So yes, you're continually flowing. And it's important that you try and make the work in the smallest batch sizes that makes sense, right? Don't leave work in this big lump. Break it down. It's proven scientifically from decades of using Kanban across different industries that you want the smallest work possible that makes sense. You want to unify that across the different tasks so that they're all around that same size. And if you can't, use your t-shirt sizes. And then you want to see those things flowing across smoothly. In order to flow, you want to make sure that people are about 85% utilized, not 100%, right? They need that 15% to breathe. They need that 15% to do admin. They need that 15% to do these ceremonies, right? 85% is about right. If you try 100%, you will kill your team, and you're kidding yourself. People will start lying about estimations because they're trying to get themselves more time. You need to say this is a buffer already in place. You can tell me the truth. We're not going to kill you, and we're actually going to go for 85% utilization, and that will keep the team alive. Now, if we have a look at the example here, you have your Kanban board, you have your 3 project swim lanes, and then you have your flows. And I've just put some examples of what might be in different bits of the flow. So maybe in review for project A, there's nothing, but maybe project B and project C have got 2 things in review. In progress with WIP limits of like 2 per person, you've got in progress project A and C, but nothing for B. So it's a bit confusing in this view because it's a bit rubbish. But if it was an actual board, which I could put together if you want me to, you could see per swimming lane what's happening in each of those columns. Therefore, you can see and you can plan ahead, and you know where there might be more help needed or where the blockers might be coming up, etc. Like I said, I've done a Kanban for game producers video. You're very welcome to go and sit through. It's quite long because there's a lot to Kanban, because Kanban's great. And doing Kanban, you really want to try and understand some of the more complex pieces of what makes Kanban methodology good. So I'm giving you a brief overview at the moment because I promised myself I wouldn't talk for 2 hours at a time. And also you can go here and learn more or just look it up, right? There are free books on Kanban that the original authors of Kanban made available, make it popular. Like you can go and grab those. But there's these 2 tools then. So I've got you the Kanban board swim lane approach. Use whatever software you want. I swear by, it's called Business Map now, which is sad, but it was called Kanbanize. But it's a bit heavy. Maybe you should start with something like Jira or Trello or something. It doesn't really matter. Just whatever works for you. As long as it's got a Kanban board. The important thing though is it has to have WIP limits. And you often find that these things don't have WIP limits. So make sure they do. Or make sure you can get an add-on which gets those WIP limits going. If you haven't got WIP limits, you're not doing Kanban. Okay? You're just doing that horrible Scrum ban thing, or just making it up as you go along, and no one's life will improve. Okay? You have to have the WIP limits in place. And then every Friday, when you talk about improvements, you can be questioning the WIP limits. You can say, well, have we got this right? Or should it be that we have an extra column in which we have blocked, for example, so that you can actually be working on 2 things and all your block stuff are over there? And then what needs to happen then is when they're unblocked, they get pulled back in. Okay. And then you can still only have 2 things going at once. So you can do things like that. You can have those conversations. But the important thing is to make sure that people follow rules, but are willing to improve the rules. Okay. But the rules are there for a reason. The WIP limits have to be there. So the capacity table at the bottom here, I'm going to show you, right? But if we have a quick look at this table, so it's all random names, by the way, and random roles. I mean, I've no idea who's in the team, but let's say these are the people. You can see the total percentage and you can see the split between projects. How has that worked out? Through the Kanban board, you just have a look. You have a look at what's been assigned and being assigned to people, and therefore you can see how heavily they are involved with each project. Pretty simple because you've got different swim lanes. This percentage should probably reflect the effort rather than just the number of cards. So small, medium, large, you need to factor that in here. But that's easy enough. And you will find this kind of thing happen where Sarah Chen, lead developer, has 110%. So you need to go, well, okay, that's not good, is it? Let's go, well, they've got 110% coming up. If they were to pull all these cards that need to be done, what can we do here? How can we take pressure off? Can we remove them completely from Project C? Or can we go back and get some more resource to help? Or can we assign someone else? Or whatever it is. And then you can see here that there's 100% at full capacity. I want that to be 85%. I want you to be able to say, I've given 15% back to the team to breathe, to eat, to you know, to more importantly do things like, not more importantly, it's not true, but as importantly, admin work, self improvement, these meetings, these cadence meetings that we're going to be doing, right? It all eats into that 100%. 85% is your goal. Honestly, believe me, it's proven again and again and again. So maybe you look at the QA lead and you go, whoa, hang on. We've got loads and loads of stuff coming from Project B that are going to hit at the same time as Project C, right? There's no way that they're going to be able to handle that on their own or with a little bit of help they've got. We're going to have to put some more money into that to get some outsourced help from other QA teams, right? External QA teams. Who knows? Animator, you might find that you got 60% there for Project A, 120%. You're like, whoa, hang on. This is always like this. We need to deal with this. And Aisha can say, I've told you it's always like this, but you don't listen. But now you have data. Okay. So again, it's not about listening to emotional claims. And often they can get very emotional claims when somebody's having to work this hard, right? It's not fair. Suddenly they get ammunition. They go, data. Thank you very much. I see. I was right. Now you have to pay attention. And you do, by the way, need to pay attention. So yeah, other people might have like next to no work, and then you have to decide, well, how do we fill that time up? Do we send them on training? Or some people might not be needed on a project at all, and then you can look at other work coming in from other projects and go, right, we can front load some of this with these people. So don't overestimate though. Don't go mad on estimation. If you want to know any more about this stuff though, and if I've been too quick, just let me know. I'm happy to distribute this, but if we go back to the Glitchbug's main question here, I think we've answered it right. How would you introduce an Agile methodology? Well, I've said here's why I would introduce it first, and then how to introduce it, which is sit with that team, spend hours with them, mapping what happens at the moment and saying, what are the rules for leaving then from ready to in progress? And like, how does it work for each of you at the moment? And maybe you need to map how it works. And then you'll find that different people will be saying different things, and it will be a really helpful team process for them to do it together. Then you've got yourself the Kanban rules to put in there, and then you test it. Then each week that goes by, you're measuring it. 4 to 6 weeks later, you've got good data. You can have a look at where the blockers are, where things aren't really working, where they are. You can try and improve things a little bit at a time, but it handles that chaos, right? You can say, there's a whole bunch of work that we wouldn't normally even put down here. I mean, I haven't even mentioned the fact that you've probably got workflows, processes, but you've also probably got software that you use, platforms that you use, areas that you store. There are people on your team who will need to put into that Kanban board in a swimming lane of monthly update or project, whatever it is, internal work so that you don't get riddled with tech debt yourselves. So they'll actually be able to visualize that, and you'll be forced to assign that to them, which means that, hey, guess what? They can't do some other things, but you'll finally be able to see it. And when you see these things, my God, it's powerful. I've done this at the initiative level with leadership teams at the top of the studio with 250 people, or across a leadership team that has 4 different studios. And I've sat there and I've visualized initiative level work and said, this is why you're so busy. You didn't realize, did you? Just how much you're all trying to do and why you can't help each other because you're swamped. It's the same thing here, right? By visualizing it, you can start talking about it. So powerful. How do you manage estimations and time management? I think we've covered that. I'm happy to cover it in more detail. I'm happy to sit down with you and go through these things. Any of you have more questions, if you want to follow up, please do. Right. I'm really open to that. I'd love it. So I hope that was useful. And let us know in whatever format you're watching or listening that it was. And please do like and subscribe and encourage me to carry on doing these things. I hope it was useful and that you got something out of it. I've kept it under half an hour, so that's a new record for me. Thank you very much.